All prepared. All prepared.
Your mic's.
This is SpinCheck Live with Leonardo Puglisi.
Good evening, I'm Leonardo Puglisi. Welcome to SpinCheck Live here on 6 News. Good to be back. We obviously had a week off due to some unfortunate issues here at 6 News, but we should be on air. You should be hearing us loud and clear, so keep us posted. And by the way, make sure you do have your say, have your feedback in the live chat, because not only does that help us with talking to you and getting your viewer feedback, it also helps to know if we're on air properly. So great to have you all with us. We obviously have a lot coming up. We've got the Victorian election, which is obviously continuing to develop. We've had what some might say scandals within the Liberal Party, and also a new party registered. Probably heard about them before, but we'll get to that all in a second. What we do want to go to, though, is a story we did mean to bring you last week, but it is an important one, and we will bring it to you now. Ambulance ramping, and it's something you've probably been hearing about a lot recently. One doctor has told a New South Wales parliamentary inquiry that patients are dying unnecessarily in what he's called third world-like conditions. That's what one doctor has told the New South Wales Parliament inquiry, which has also been told that ambulance ramping is not a rare occurrence in the state. Now, we've also been hearing Queensland and Victoria, they have also been dealing with these ramping issues as well. For more on that, we're going to bring in Roman McKinnon, our political editor here at 6 News, who's been covering this for us. Roman, good evening to you. First of all, just kind of give us the basics here. What is causing this, and what have governments been doing about it?
Yeah, good evening, Leo. Well, patients have been left waiting for 36 hours in some cases in New South Wales. Ambulance
Nothing.
ramping just to... No?
God love this.
Can you hear me?
Roman? No?
Hello, can you hear me? Oh,
No Roman there. We're gonna take in. We're gonna keep going now because we'll get back to him in a second. Number one, also what we do want to know is get your feedback in the live chat right now. We've had a big development with the Victorian election, though. We now have 21 parties registered with the State Electoral Commission. Of course, we've got the majors, Labor, Liberal, the Nationals, the Greens, Animal Justice has been registered for quite a while, but we've had a few new registrations. New Democrats came in recently. Today we had legalised cannabis. Now, of course, you know them. They almost stole a seat from Pauline Hanson at the 2022 federal election in the Queensland Senate race. But Pauline Hanson, what she has, what she said at the time was, she wasn't worried about it, and yeah, she did eventually get back in. But legalised cannabis now registered for the Victorian state election. What we are expecting, and this is coming from the analysis of quite a few people, was that they could pick up easily 2% of the vote, and that comes from their name alone. But also, thanks to the group voting ticket system, they could actually win a seat, possibly one, maybe even two. It's not impossible for a minor party to get even 3 in the upper house. We're excluding the Greens there. I think they had 5 at one time. Legalised cannabis was also recently in a battle with legalised marijuana, which was a really interesting battle because both of them, while they had the similar name, legalised marijuana, pretty much zero information about them. They eventually pulled out of the race, a bit similar to the Family First Victoria versus Family First Victoria, which if you've been watching us here at 6 News, we have been covering, I should say, quite a bit in depth. The other big scandal coming out of the Victorian election right now, the other main story was, of course, the Victorian Liberals, which are having some might say, internal infighting. We will get to that shortly, but we do want to bring in now, again, Roman McKinnon. Second time lucky. Again, you got to love these live broadcasts. Roman, good evening once again to you. So again, just take us through what is causing this ambulance ramping and what have governments been saying about it, because again, it's not just New South Wales, it really is also Victoria and Queensland, and of course, it doesn't seem to just be COVID related, does it?
Yeah, well, good evening. Hopefully you can hear me and my picture's all good now. The main cause of this is obviously COVID and labour shortages and things like that in the hospital room. The Australasian College for Emergency Medicine President Claire Skinner said COVID was, quote, the straw that broke the camel's back. Patients in New South Wales have been left waiting for up to 36 hours. And just to make that clear, 30 minutes is considered an acceptable time to wait. Also, 1 in 10 patients left the emergency department without treatment between April and June. That was the highest quarterly figure on record. So it's really quite astonishing how the government can manage this. Of course, the Labor government called an inquiry in July into this. This was last week that started with giving evidence from Claire Skinner there, the Australasian College for Emergency Medicine president. Gee, that's a long title. She also said that a patient's chance of death increased 10% if they waited 8 hours or more. She also said that ambulance ramping was rare in some cases, which it's really hard to get into hospitals now, especially the ones around CBDs, including in Sydney, Brisbane, and Melbourne. And who knows, it could spark a new wave across the country. In Adelaide, for example, it could keep happening there. But as sort of COVID's off a lot of people's minds, now it's sort of taken the focal point away from still waiting in line for a hospital and for an ambulance, and because those ambulances, it's all just a backlog. So if someone's waiting with a bed at the hospital, then they can't reach other patients that need that emergency help. So it's all really just a backlog.
And Roman, you mentioned it a bit there, but also what else have governments been saying about this? Because obviously, and you don't always want to bring politics into it, Roman. You are the political editor, though. But of course, we do have a state election in Victoria where COVID-19, the health system is obviously a major issue, as I'm sure you're aware, and you've been covering it for us. And of course, in Queensland, it's been having issues. You guys don't have a state election there till 2024. You had one in 2020. But yeah, in terms of that government response, I've been hearing much action from them, because action seems to be the main thing that people are indeed wanting.
Yeah, well, definitely at a federal level, have we really seen that much? It can be offloaded to the state levels. Of course, Victoria has an election just next month, so obviously I'm not down in Victoria. You are, Leo, and of course our great team down there. But definitely that's something that should be, or not should, but that is the front of voters' minds, hospitals. So what happens if I get in trouble and need an ambulance? What will happen? Like, how long will I have to wait? In some cases, it may take 10 minutes. In another case, it might take 10 hours. It can all really vary on, the timing and the nurses. There was a report by the Bureau of Health that shows patients waited longer in emergency departments and faced record waiting times from January to March. As you mentioned, Victoria and Queensland are dealing with the same issues, and it's not just Victoria. dealing with these issues. It's also New South Wales, who also have a state election coming up. So could that be offloaded to state governments? Yeah, who knows?
All right, we're just gonna leave Roman there for a second. Obviously, we're having a bit of a delay on his end. It seems he's been hearing us loud and clear, but nevertheless, gotta love that delay. You are staying with us here on 6 News right now as we continue Spin Check Live for us. We're going to take a quick break now, but after that, we're going to hope to speak to Stuart Jeffrey. We're also going to get more on what's happening with the Victorian Liberals campaign. Very short time away from the November state election. You are watching 6 News Spin Check Live. We will be back in just a second. No paywalls, no sign-ins. sixnewsau.com is your one-stop place for all the latest breaking news, in-depth stories and exclusive reports. Plus, find out more about us here at 6 News, who our team is and where we came from. That's all available right now. Head to our website, sixnewsau.com.
When big news breaks,
It pains me to announce that I have no option but to resign from the office of Premier.
Reimpose stage 3 stay-at-home restrictions effective from midnight tomorrow night.
6 News is there for you.
This was a scene of what some are describing as almost a violent confrontations with police and protesters.
Bringing you up-to-the-minute coverage that's focused on the facts.
I just wrapped up a call with the Trump campaign. The waters have begun receding in southeast Queensland now. The cleanup begins.
No matter the time.
Welcome to this 6 News major breaking news we have for you.
No matter the place.
Yeah, sorry, I'm at the supermarket right now.
You'll always see it first right here on 6 News. Every week, Leo Puglisi and Ivan Lung discuss the big stories that matter in a joint podcast that brings together the forces of two independent and unbiased news outlets.
Lots of stuff to talk about, Leo, on the other side of the country as usual.
Thank you very much, man. Always great to chat.
Listen to East plus West. Available now exclusively for Patreon subscribers. Sign up for just $4 a month. Head to patreon.com/6newsau. 6 News, proudly sponsored by Blackmagic Design. Find out more at blackmagicdesign.com.
No paywalls, no sign-ins. sixnewsau.com is your one-stop place for all the latest breaking news, in-depth stories and exclusive reports. Plus, find out more about us here at 6 News, who our team is and where we came from. That's all available right now. Head to our website, sixnewsau.com.
When big news breaks.
It pains me to announce that I have no option but to resign from the office of Premier.
Reimpose stage 3 stay-at-home restrictions effective from midnight tomorrow night.
6 News is there for you.
This was a scene of what some are describing as almost a violent confrontations with police and protesters.
Bringing you up-to-the-minute coverage that's focused on the facts.
I just wrapped up a call with the Trump campaign. The waters have begun receding in southeast Queensland now. The cleanup begins.
No matter the time.
Welcome to this 6 News major breaking news we have for you.
No matter the place.
Yeah, sorry, I'm at the supermarket right now.
You'll always see it first right here on 6 News. Every week, Leo Puglisi and Ivan Long discuss the big stories that matter in a joint podcast that brings together the forces of two independent and unbiased news outlets.
Lots of stuff to talk about, Leo, on the other side of the country as usual.
Thank you very much, man. Always great to chat.
Listen to East plus West. Available now exclusively for Patreon subscribers. Sign up for just $4 a month. Head to patreon.com/sixnewsau. 6 News, proudly sponsored by Blackmagic Design. Find out more at blackmagicdesign.com.
Welcome back. You're with SpinCheck Live here on 6 News. Now, 90% technical issue free. Thanks for staying with us here. We're going to get into a lot of topics right now, a lot happening in the political sphere. Obviously, we have the Victorian election, but also lots happening federally. The Stage 3 tax cuts still dominating the headlines. And then we've also had some more niche things, which I think Stuart and I will get into a lot. We're going to bring in Roman in a second, but I just want to get Stuart first of all, because it's probably easier to cross to one guest than two in our technical situation right now. Stuart, good evening to you. Stuart Jeffrey, of course, our 6 News contributor. He is in Queensland. Stuart, the Victorian election, we have had some pretty big... Oh, there I am again. We've had some pretty big developments with the Victorian Liberal Party campaign right now. Now, of course, it's less than 50 days until the state election. And we've had the ABC reporting that their campaign's been thrown into, quote, turmoil following the resignation of the party's in-house legal counsel. The VEC also confirming it is, quote, making inquiries following complaints Liberal MPs have sent out postal voting application forms to constituents. It's a big story. What do you make of this all? Because some have said that, you know, the Liberals should be easily getting into government right now, but based on polls and based on what they're doing, it doesn't look like it's going to happen.
Yeah, look, I don't see much chance of them winning either way, really, but the fact that we're now seeing having the legal counsel quit is definitely big news for the party. And I really don't see how this is going to help them in any way, especially if the allegations about the postal voting are true. I think that's basically going to sink the ship for the Liberal Party in Victoria, at least for this election.
Do you reckon, and this is the analysis some people have made themselves, that under any normal circumstances, and I know COVID-19 has not been normal, we can all probably agree on that, but the opposition in any state, Liberal or Coalition or Labor or whatever, they should really be getting in, and they should be effectively just be a government in waiting here. So what do you think's gone wrong so far? And I know we're talking about things going wrong before the election here, but you know they've had to go back to an old leader. They've had 2 attempted spills. One was successful last year alone to bring back their old leader, and it's now looking like we're going to see Dan Andrews returned, and we're going to have another 4 years of a Labor government here. That would make it 12. And Labor's, of course, had a huge stronghold on Victorian politics. So what do you think's behind this all? It's quite extraordinary. We're having a few issues there with Stuart, so we're going to just hold off for him right now. Actually, you know what? Let's try that again. Stuart, answer that question again. We're going to try to get to you then. I think we sorted out the issue. Don't touch anything. Have a go at it.
Okay. Sorry, so what I was saying is the fact that it's limited to the National Party, so the Liberal Party is not the Nationals, indicates to me that it's a response, I guess, to the fact that Teals really swept across Victoria and the Liberals suffered greatly because of that at the federal level election. And I think this is basically the Liberal Party panicking and doing, okay, what can we to keep our power at all in the state? The Nationals are fine, so it's the coalition only being effective in the Liberal part of the coalition seems to show me that this is simply just the fallout of the federal election. And if the state election goes the same way, then I reckon this is going to go on into the next year after the new year. I reckon we're still going to see the same consequences of this. And I wouldn't be surprised at all if we see similar things, at least on a lower scale, in New South Wales next year, because they also suffered in Sydney as well, not just in Melbourne, but also in Sydney. So I am slightly worried for the Liberals that we could see similar situation in New South Wales come the election next year.
It's going to be pretty extraordinary to see how that all unfolds. Stu, we'll get back to you in a second, but we want to bring in now, hopefully with less than a 25-second delay, Roman McKinnon, our political editor. He is also in Queensland. He's in Brisbane for us. Roman, good evening to you. So what do you make, just from your observations, because I know for our live election night coverage, which should all be smooth, you'll be covering the seats closely, but just what do you make of this from someone who is in Queensland, seeing, and regardless of whether people think Dan's done the right thing or not during COVID, seeing an 8-year incumbent, and remember the coalition was in for 9 federally, an 8-year incumbent looking like he's going to come back with a majority, with an extremely high approval rating, because the opposition, some might say, can't get their stuff together. What do you make of all this? Because also in 2020, I might add, you had Anastasia Palaszczuk, your Labor government re-elected in a pretty big, I wouldn't say landslide, but a pretty big way too.
Yes, very extraordinary, because once you start to go on term after term, just like with the coalition, you start to see a few more cracks, and then the opposition, of course, pick up on those. I thought maybe, 2020, that COVID, that those laws, those, the violent CMFEU protests, I thought for sure Dan Andrews wouldn't stand a chance, really, being re-elected this time around. But I think definitely it is very extraordinary to stay in for that long, and to hold that ground without doing that much, and to really have that support. Well, is that a very strong sorry, one sec. Is that a very strong a premier, or is that just a really weak opposition leader not picking up on those things? Or, it's quite interesting.
If it wasn't for that little Zoom interruption there, I think we're gonna. But no, good comments there, and I think we understand what you're saying there. I think the other thing that we want to bring in, though, is that we've had another party registered today. We are now up to 21 in Victoria. There are 8 other applications still pending. I'll get to Stuart on this in a second, but I'll stay with Roman for just a second. It is legalised cannabis Victoria. Now, Roman, as I mentioned, I think in a bit of a hectic way before, legalised cannabis almost managed to get a Queensland Senate seat, that being Pauline Hanson's seat. They weren't successful enough. And of course, you guys don't have an upper house, which is a whole different issue, but, legalised cannabis was probably likely to win there too. So I want to ask you whether you think we could have some legalised cannabis success here in Victoria just based off their name alone, because that itself, I think, gives them 2% of the vote, minimum.
Well, no offense to Collingwood, but the Collingwood area legalised cannabis might pick up a few votes. No, definitely the name there. It's definitely impactful. It's very, I wouldn't say catchy, but it's really easy to remember. And when you see that, if you're interested in those things, you would put, legalized cannabis first, or, wherever. But I think if they target not a lot of seats, not like a United Australia Party or anything like that go very broad. I think if they could focus on maybe one seat, for example, that might help them get across the line. They put everything, all that grassroots campaigning, or however they want to campaign, really. It's of course, it's up to them. But I think if they focus their attention into one seat, I think they could have some good success, even in the upper house as well, just like what they did in Queensland with Pauline Hanson.
Yeah, look, Roman, it's really interesting, and I wonder what the good people of Collingwood would think about that joke, because I don't know if you've ever been to Collingwood, but of course we know their footy team. But nevertheless, look, legalising cannabis does seem to be somewhat a popular position. I know the Greens have been talking about it federally and on a state level, but nevertheless, legalising cannabis itself is another issue. But look, again, we should remind our viewers who might not be aware, we still do have upper house regions here in Victoria, so they can be focused on a specific region. Roman, thank you. We are gonna leave you there tonight. After a few technical issues, but we've managed to get through to that there. So Stuart, stay with us. But Roman McKinnon, political editor, thank you. And of course, also we will have your special report on the federal election and the media and how that covered that. That's next week here on SpinCheck 8 p.m. Eastern. But Roman, thank you.
Thanks, Leo.
All right, Roman McKinnon there, Six News political editor, getting through the technical issues with us there. Although I recommend he stays on this program just in the event of an issue with me. But Stuart, we want to get back to you now. Just before we get on to the Q&A, just very quickly in about 30 seconds, legalise cannabis. Could they win an upper house seat in Victoria? Yes or no?
Given the GVT, I'd say yes, they can.
I would have to agree with that. Okay, look, again, we'd like to hear your questions about our law and legal coverage coming up in a sec. But, of course, we've been covering Commonwealth knowledge on our website right now. A great series from Stuart. You can check that out, covering all things government, law, legal. I've got a new podcast between Parks Place and Capitol Hill, which is also coming out next week. I'm going to have some great guests for you on that. But Stuart, we've had a few questions coming in, and we are getting them through in the live chat as well, or we want to get them through. But one I think I saw is, why do you think people are interested in this, or do you think people are interested in this? Because you've been able to break them down, but at the same time, and even when I'm reading your articles as the editor, law and legal stuff is not exactly the easiest thing to digest at times.
Yeah, no, I completely agree, and there's definitely not a culture of it in Australia right now. We don't have civics taught in school like the US, as we don't have that rich centuries-long legal history that the UK has. But I think that looking at stuff like The Voice in Parliament right now, the Republic debate, Scott Morrison's secret ministries, there are these issues there that I believe that we can then build on and really show how much these legal issues affect our everyday lives. I heard an interesting comparison on an Australian National University legal podcast, Secondary Rules, or on constitutional and public law, and they pointed out that the Constitution kind of acts a little bit like say your Bible or another religious text, in the sense that it does really dictate everyone how our lives work, and all of the border legal system in the same way. It really governs everything we do. So you'd be kind of an idiot to not try and pay attention to just how that will affect your lives. And that's where I think the podcast comes in, looking at more broader issues at a state level and at a federal level.
Yeah, so obviously we're gonna have guests for that, and we're gonna try to speak to so many interesting guests as possible when it comes to the legal sphere. But at the same time, I think another comment, I'm not sure where I got it, so I apologise if you asked it. I don't actually remember who you are. I don't remember if it was a comment. But I saw it, and it was kind of asking whether, like, how linked is government and law itself? Because we cover both on Commonwealth knowledge, and as I'm sure you're doing in between Park Place and Capitol Hill. But at the same time, people have always said, kind of separate, the government from some legal things, and not all legal things that we've covered have necessarily involved the government. How closely connected are they? Do you really think, or do you think they are really closely connected?
There's definitely somewhat of a hard separation of powers, so there's definitely some separation there. I'd say it really depends with what the issue is you're talking about. Constitutional law, there's definitely more connection there than, say, other issues, especially looking more at your commercial law and stuff that's mostly courts driven, not so much for Parliament to worry about. However, there is definitely some connection there, especially now we're seeing just last month a High Court ruling in Garlett in Western Australia, where it was basically the High Court ruled 5-2 that state courts at least can, I guess, lock up criminals past the expiration of their sentence if Parliament lets them, because they're a risk to the community. So we are seeing that line between Parliament and courts becoming blurred increasingly over the last couple of decades, I'd say.
Yeah, and look, just finally, because I know we've kind of had to rush through this due to the technical software. I promise you, Stuart, we are going to have more on this Q&A in future, and actually probably on Sunday night. But I just want to ask quickly regarding the first episode that we're going to have of Between Parks Place and Capitol Hill, and give me about a 15-second answer here. What can we expect on it in terms of guests and what we're covering?
Yes, so I'll be joined by David Shoebridge, the Greens Justice spokesperson, Senator for Victoria, I believe, talking about the Greens cannabis bill. And then I'll be joined by Professor from the TC Byrne Law School, Graham Orr, to talk about alternatives to the Greens national legislation approach to legalising cannabis recreationally and medically.
Stuart, you fit it in there very well. We've got about 1 minute to go here, but thank you very much. We're going to leave you there, and we're going to cover it more in depth. Just finally tonight, we put out a random poll on what political party you want us to cover here. We put it on Patreon. Then it was an even tie, so we put it to Twitter. The one we got was the Victorian Socialist Party. So let's look at the Victorian Socialist Party. Now, they're not the current one. They are the old Victorian Socialist Party, founded in 1906. John Curtin, who actually later became the Labor PM during much of World War II, was involved in the party. They contested the 1908 Vic election, had 167 primary votes only. To quote Wikipedia, they were unique among political organisations for opposition to racism. However, after Tom Mann's departure in 1909, the party began to less strongly oppose racism. And then their secretary involved advocated keeping races pure by 1921. So we'll wrap it up there here on SpinCheck Live for you. I don't know how long this Zoom meeting's got left, so I don't want to be cut off mid-sentence, but thank you very much for tuning in. Thank you very much for bearing through the technical issues. I am Leonardo Puglisi in Melbourne on behalf of Stuart, Roman, and everyone behind the scenes. Thank you very much for tuning in. Have a good night. We'll see you on Sunday.